In A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, the Stark family have ruled the North for thousands of years, as Kings of Winter, then as Wardens of the North after Aegon came. Things change in the first book and season of Thrones when the Lord of Winterfell, Ned Stark, is imprisoned and executed by King Joffrey. Ned's son Robb marches south with an army, and the North secedes from the Seven Kingdoms, declaring Robb king in the North and the Riverlands, the first Stark king in 300 years. But this doesn't last long. Winterfell is captured by Theon Greyjoy, then burned by Ramsay Bolton, and the Stark kids scatter. Robb's campaign falters, and he's killed at the Red Wedding by the Boltons and the Freys. Roose Bolton is made Warden of the North. So for the first time in thousands of years, the North is no longer ruled by a Stark. Is this the end for the Kings of Winter, or does the North remember? In Season 6 of the Game of Thrones show, the Starks make a quick comeback. Jon and Sansa take Winterfell from the Boltons, Jon is named king, and the North is again ruled by a Stark, or a Snow, or a Targaryen, or a Sand, depending on who's keeping score, but the point is, in the books, none of this has happened. By Dance's end, Jon is still dead, Sansa's still in the Vale, Arya is still in Braavos, Bran is still a tree, Rickon's apparently on the island of Skargos, and Stannis Baratheon is still alive, with his army, marching against the Boltons in Winterfell. While Stannis has some of the North on his side, most houses officially support the Boltons and their allies the Freys. But unlike the straightforward story of the show, the books lay out a massively complex political situation in the North, with dozens of important players, each with their own motivations, ambitions, loyalties, secrets, loves and hates and hopes. Fans have written hundreds of thousands of words of analysis and theories and predictions on this, many claiming that most of the northern houses are secretly plotting to usurp the Boltons and restore a Stark to Winterfell. This idea is called the Grand Northern Conspiracy. The Lords of the North have a lot of good reasons to support the Starks over the Boltons. The Starks have ruled the North for thousands of years, and people seem to think they've done a pretty good job. Historically, they've defended the North from raiders, slavers, Andals, wargs, and wildlings, and it supposedly was a Stark who built the Wall to protect the North from White Walkers. More recently, Ned Stark in particular was renowned for his sense of honor and justice, winning great respect and loyalty from many people in the North. Barbary Dustin says the Northmen love the Starks, but the Boltons, not so much. The Boltons are infamous for flaying their enemies and wearing their skins as cloaks. Their Lord Roose is cruel, cold, and creepy, known for his habit of leeching, and his son Ramsay is a straight-up psycho, a murderous beast in human skin, who hunts and rapes women for sport. The Boltons commit terrible crimes against the North in order to take control. Ramsay betrays and kills Northmen at Winterfell and kills the Lady of Hornwood. Roose sends northern armies to a suicide mission at Duskendale. And at the Red Wedding, the Boltons betray King Robb, participating in the breaking of Guestrite and the slaughter of hundreds of Northmen. Every lord at Winterfell lost family at the Red Wedding, and the North remembers. So the Northern Lords have plenty of motivation to oppose the Boltons and restore the Starks to power. What evidence is there of a conspiracy? We know for a fact that Lord Wyman of House Manderley is plotting against the Boltons and Freys. He pretends to be on their side, but in Dance he secretly meets with Davos Seaworth and gives an awesome speech about the debt the Manderleys owe to the Starks, and about the murder of Wyman's son Wendell at the Red Wedding. He says the North remembers, and the Mummers' farce is almost done. Wyman reveals that with the help of an Ironborn boy called Wex, Wyman's learned the truth of the sack of Winterfell, that it wasn't Theon Greyjoy, but Ramsay Bolton who burned the castle and killed its people, and that Bran and Rickon Stark weren't killed by Theon, but are still alive. Apparently Rickon is on Skargos, an island up near the Wall. Wyman tells Davos to go there and fetch Rickon so that the North can rally around the young Stark and oppose the Boltons. If Davos does this, Wyman says, he'll accept Stannis as his king, with Rickon Stark as Lord of Winterfell. That seems to be the plan. So Manderley is plotting against the Boltons, and other houses are in on it too. Robert Glover is at the meeting with Davos, and he may be in touch with his brother Lord Galbart. There are even hints that Robert may raise an army. Wyman says Houses Locke and Flint of Widow's Watch follow his lead, and we do see someone from House Locke speak up against Ramsay. So it seems Houses Locke, Flint, and Glover are, to at least some extent, a part of Manderley's conspiracy. It's also possible that House Umber is involved. The Umbers appear to be split down the middle. Half of them under Crowfoot Umber side with Stannis, while the other half under Horsebane Umber side with the Boltons. But it's made clear that Horsebane isn't really loyal to Roose. He only joins the Boltons because the Freys hold his nephew, the Great Jon, captive. Roose says the Umbers are cunning, and that he fears them, and he probably should. Because back in Clash, the Umbers are ordered to work with the Manderleys to build a fleet of warships, and in Dance, we see the fleet complete, hidden up the White Knife River. So given that we know the Umbers have been working on a secret fleet with the Manderleys, and that they're not really loyal to the Boltons, it seems very plausible that the Umbers are in on Wyman's conspiracy. There's further evidence for this in the Dance chapters in Winterfell, where all the Boltons and Freys and their supposed northern allies are cooped up together in the castle, with snowstorms and Stannis coming outside, while tensions slowly rise. There's this one bit where it's mentioned that someone makes snowmen shaped like 4 particular northern lords: Wyman Manderley, Horsebane Umber, Harwood Stout, and Barbary Dustin. There's pretty strong evidence that these 4 snowmen represent a conspiracy in Winterfell. At one point, we see Harwood Stout, who's the sworn man of Barbary Dustin, talking quietly with Horsebane Umber, who we know has been working with Wyman. After this conversation, Barbary becomes strangely interested in the Winterfell crypts and gets Theon to take her down there. The crypts are the ancient resting place of dead Starks, each represented by a statue holding a sword. Barbary notices that 3 of these swords are missing. The significance of this is that these 3 missing swords are the swords taken by Osha, Meera, and Bran when they escape Winterfell. These 3 missing swords prove Wex's story that Bran and Rickon are alive and that the Boltons lie about the sack of Winterfell. The fact that Barbary searches the crypts in the first place suggests that she heard Wex's story from Wyman, possibly through the conversation Harwood has with Horsebane. Further, we know from White Harbour that Wyman uses long visits to the Privy to disguise secret meetings, and it's hinted he continues to do this at Winterfell. So the evidence is pretty strong that Wyman, Harwood, Barbary, and Horsebane are conspiring in Winterfell, discussing Wex's story about Bran and Rickon and Manderley's plans to restore House Stark. After Barbary visits the crypts, she speaks out boldly to the Freys about the people killed at the Red Wedding. She parts her lips in a thin, feral smile and says the North remembers. So that's one part of the Grand Northern Conspiracy. Wyman Manderley, Robert Glover, Horsebane Umber, and Barbary Dustin, along with the Locks and Flints, appear to be plotting to betray the Boltons and make Rickon Stark Lord of Winterfell. But there's a whole other part to the conspiracy which takes place to the south with its roots in events of the past. In the second book, Robb Stark says that if he dies, he wants Jon Snow to follow him as king in the north. At this point, Sansa is married to Tyrion Lannister, and Robb believes Arya, Bran, and Rickon to be dead, so he decides that the best course of action is to legitimize Jon as a Stark and have him follow Robb as king if he dies. Later that chapter, Robb meets with some of his lords and gets them to sign a document to declare Jon his heir. Now that Robb is dead, the question is, who knows about this will, and what plans might be underway to carry it out and make Jon king? The people who were present at the signing of the will include Catelyn Stark, Edmure Tully, Great Jon Umber, Jason Mallister, Maege Mormont, and Galbart Glover. The Great Jon and Jason are both prisoners, so they probably can't do much, but Maege and Galbart are sent on a mission to Howland Reed in the Neck, and it seems as though they do arrive because the Crannogmen follow up on some orders Robb gives about Moat Cailin. So Maege and Galbart seem to be with Howland in the Neck, and this offers a lot of opportunities for scheming. Because not only are Maege and Galbart some of the only people in Westeros who know that Jon Snow is the rightful king in the north, but Howland Reed is the only living survivor of the fight at the Tower of Joy years ago, where it was discovered that Jon is the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, potentially giving Jon a claim on the Iron Throne of all Westeros. That is a lot of super important information in one place, and there are some hints that this information is being put into action. This involves another witness to Robb's will, Catelyn Stark. So, Catelyn dies at the Red Wedding, but in the books, she's resurrected by Beric Dondarrion and becomes Lady Stoneheart, a terrible, vengeful spirit who leads the Brotherhood without banners down a dark and murderous path, killing everyone even remotely connected to the Red Wedding. But Stoneheart's not just a brutal killer, there's a definite method to her murder. During the Siege of Riverrun, a singer called Tom of Seven Streams spies for the Brotherhood in the Lannister Frey camp. He lets the Brotherhood know when certain Freys are traveling the Riverlands so that Lady Stoneheart can capture and kill them. Tom may also hear about the transport of Lannister prisoners and an upcoming Lannister wedding. Some fans speculate that the Brotherhood and some Riverlords will free the prisoners and crash the wedding to massacre Freys Lannisters in a Red Wedding 2.0. But Stoneheart's activities also connect back to Robb's will, because in Feast, Stoneheart travels in or near Hagsmire, the place where Robb's will is signed, then heads back up into the Neck, the same place Howland, Maege, and Galbart seem to be. It seems likely that Stoneheart is involved in a plot with these guys over Robb's will, because she's not only a witness to the will, like Maege and Galbart, but Stoneheart also has Robb's old crown. So the power to crown the next king in the North is in her hands. Which does raise an issue. Stoneheart might not want to crown Jon as king, because at least in life, Catelyn really doesn't like Jon. As a bastard son of Ned, Jon represents Ned's infidelity to Cat. But it just so happens that Howland Reed is the one person in the world who can tell Catelyn that Jon isn't really Ned's bastard, that he's Lyanna's son by Rhaegar Targaryen. Ned claimed Jon was his in order to protect him. So Stoneheart is a bit of an angry murder zombie at the moment and might not listen, but if Howland can change Stoneheart's mind about Jon, she may be happy to join in on a conspiracy to crown Jon king in the North. Lem says that Stoneheart doesn't speak because her throat is cut too deep, but, he says, she remembers. Another witness to Robb's will is Edmure Tully. He's a prisoner of the Freys at Riverrun, but he meets with some important people. In one chapter, Jaime leaves him alone with Thomas Evans, the Brotherhood spy, so it's possible Ed shares information with the Brotherhood and Stoneheart. Later, Jaime lets Edmure enter Riverrun to end the siege, which presents a golden opportunity to conspire with the Tully men, including Edmure's uncle, Brynden Blackfish. Brynden is loyal to House Stark, and Jaime says he doesn't doubt Brynden will continue the fight. In the show, Brynden dies in Riverrun, but in the books, Edmure helps him escape. So now, Brynden's out there somewhere, determined to fight for House Stark, and since he speaks with his nephew Edmure, he may now know about Robb's will and the possible plot to crown Jon Snow. Another couple of men who leave Riverrun include Desmond Grell and Robin Ryger, the Tully Master-at-Arms and Captain of Guard. These guys choose to join the Night's Watch at the Wall, where Jon happens to be. Fans speculate that these trusted Tully men may have been sent by Edmure in order to contact Jon, maybe to tell him about the conspiracy to crown Jon as heir to Robb. So, this Riverland stuff is not as certain as the Manderley conspiracy. There's no direct evidence that any of these guys are plotting over Robb's will, but it is at least very suspicious that Maege and Galbart, witnesses to Robb's will, and Stoneheart, who has Robb's crown, all go to the Neck, where Howland lives, the one guy who knows the truth of Jon's birth. The stuff with Edmure, Brynden, Desmond, and Robin might not be related, but it is plausible that these guys are also somehow involved in a conspiracy to crown Jon Snow. Okay, so we've got the Manderley conspiracy around Winterfell to betray the Boltons and support Rickon Stark, and a possible conspiracy in the Neck to crown Jon Snow as Robb's heir to the North. There's also possibly some plotting going on within the army that Stannis is marching on Winterfell. Part of Stannis' army is made up of men he brought up from the south, but most of them are Northmen, including the Mountain Clansmen, some Mormonts, Glovers, and others. And the Northmen don't like Stannis. He's a stranger to the North and worships a foreign god. The real reason they march in his army is to kill Boltons and rescue Arya Stark. In the books, Ramsay marries a girl who the Boltons say is Arya Stark, but is actually a girl called Jane Poole. The real Arya is over in Braavos, but the North doesn't know that. As far as they're concerned, Ned Stark's little girl is in the clutches of Bolton's bastard, and they're willing to die to rescue her. These guys are passionately loyal to House Stark. So, is it possible that they're involved in these conspiracies to install Rickon or crown Jon? The best hint we've got is that two leaders of the Mountain Clansmen, the Norrie and the Flint, come and visit Jon at the Wall, and Jon himself thinks that they must have some special reason to be there. Fans suggest that these clansmen know about Robb's will, and come to the Wall to judge if Jon could be a worthy king in the North. Jon discusses his plans for the wildlings with the clansmen, and tells them he may seem a green boy in their eyes, but he is still a son of Eddard Stark, which may be exactly what the clansmen want to hear. But if the clansmen are in on the plot to crown Jon, how are they in contact with the folks in the Neck who know about the will? One possibility is that they're in touch with Maege Mormont through her daughter Alysanne, who's on the march with Stannis. Maege's other daughter Lyanna is the kid who writes that awesome letter and that speech in the show. Alternatively, the clansman might be in touch with Galbart Glover, maybe through his sister-in-law Sybil, who's been spending a suspiciously large amount of time praying in the Godswood, which is something Sansa does in Clash to receive secret messages. So the clansman might possibly know about Robb's will. But there is another complication in that the clansmen know that Bran Stark is alive. They see him travelling north to the Wall, and a clansman from House Little even meets Bran. This is important information, because Bran is King Robb's oldest living brother, his heir, if it weren't for the will, which only skips Bran for Jon because Robb thought that Bran is dead. It's very telling that the clansmen don't tell Stannis about Bran. Whatever their intentions, they're clearly keeping secrets. So while there's no clear evidence of any conspiracy among the Northmen in Stannis' army, there are some possible connections, and at the least, the Northmen are clearly more loyal to Stark than they are to Stannis. There are a few other northern houses to talk about. House Karstark is an interesting one, because Arnulf Karstark joins with Stannis, but secretly plans to betray him for the Boltons. Part of his scheme is to forcibly marry the heir to Karhold, Alis Karstark, to his son Cregan, so he can be Lord of Karhold. But Alis escapes, and the person she turns to for protection and justice is none other than Jon Snow. She comes all the way north to the Wall and begs him for help, layers him as her only hope, as the last son of Eddard Stark. There's no evidence Alis knows about any conspiracy, but her attitude to Jon does support the idea that the people in the north see Jon as the inheritor of Ned Stark's legacy, and a legitimate leader in the north. Anyway, in a sample chapter of Winds, Stannis finds out about Arnulf's deception and locks up his men, so the Karstarks are out of action for now. There's also House Hornwood. After the deaths of Lord Hallis and Darren, Diegmueller becomes the Lady of the Hornwood, but Ramsay forcibly marries and kills her, starving her in a dungeon till she chews her own fingers off. Ramsay now calls himself Lord of the Hornwood, and some Hornwood men have submitted to him, joining the Bolton army. But as Barbary Dustin points out, the Hornwoods haven't forgotten what Ramsay did to Diegmueller. There's no evidence of Hornwoods involved in any conspiracy, but it's fair to say they're not real loyal to the Boltons. The Curwens and Tallhearts are similar. We don't know all that much about them, but we do know that Roose sends Curwen and Tallheart men into a suicide mission at Duskendale, and that at the sack of Winterfell, Ramsay betrays and kills Lord Clay Curwen and Leopold Tallheart. Some survivors of this battle end up joining Stannis' army, which could be a really big deal. These men could spread the word of Ramsay's crimes and betrayal at Winterfell, which most of the North still believes were committed by Theon. So while we don't know of any Curwen or Tallheart involvement in any conspiracy, the houses are, in Roose Bolton's words, not to be relied on. Really, the only big northern house that probably is loyal to House Bolton is House Riswell. The Riswells are tied to the Boltons by marriage, and we see Riswell leaders working closely with the Boltons and Freys. The Riswells did lose men at the Red Wedding, but there are no particular hints that they're disloyal to the Boltons. So in the words of Roose Bolton, northern politics in Dance is a world of treachery and deceit. People siding with the Boltons aren't really loyal to the Boltons, people siding with Stannis aren't really loyal to Stannis. Most folks seem to want a Stark in Winterfell. But is there a Grand Northern conspiracy? We do know Wyman Manderly is plotting to install Rickon Stark. Robert Glover, the Flints and Locks are in on it, and probably so are the Snowmen in Winterfell, Horsebane and Barbary. To the south, there's a probable plot over Robb's will to crown Jon, involving Maege and Galbart and Howland, who are connected to Stoneheart and Tom and Edmure and Brynden and the Riverrun guys. It's also kind of possible that the Mountain clans, Maege Mormont or Sybil Glover, are involved, themselves connected to Jon. Are all these people working together in unison, secretly scheming to play Stannis and Roose against each other, to get vengeance on the Boltons and Freys, and finally to return a Stark to Winterfell in a truly grand northern conspiracy? Are all these people connected? Maybe, but probably not, for a few reasons. Firstly, they don't have phones in Westeros, so it's really hard to communicate secretly. There are messenger ravens, but we're told a bunch of times that it's a bad idea to trust a secret to a bird. They can be intercepted or lost, and besides, letters are generally read and written by maesters, who themselves aren't trusted. Barbary and Wyman specifically both question maesters. So communication's hard, and secondly, the bigger a conspiracy is, the less likely it is to stay secret. That's true in the real world and in Westeros, and we got a Westerosi example in the Karstark treachery. As far as we know, only a few Karstark men know about Arnulf's plan to betray Stannis, and yet, thanks to Alice, the truth gets out. Stannis himself makes a point that you can't keep secrets among lots and lots of people. Big grand conspiracies just aren't that plausible. What it really looks like is that there are multiple different separate plans at work here. Manderly wants to make Rickon Lord of Winterfell, recognizing Stannis as king, while Maege and Galbart presumably want to make Jon Snow king. People like Stoneheart and the Mountain Clansmen have their own priorities. These all seem like separate plots. So the evidence doesn't support the idea of one big cohesive Grand Northern conspiracy. What it does support are several medium-sized, loosely overlapping plots in the North and Riverlands, which doesn't have as much of a ring to it, but still, ultimately we can conclude that yes, there are conspiracies at work in the North. The North remembers millennia of just Stark rule. The North remembers Bolton crimes at the Red Wedding and elsewhere. The Manderlys remember, the Riverlands remember, the Neck remembers, Winterfell remembers, the Clansmen remember, and by one plot or another, the Starks will rule the North again. Thanks for watching. There are lots more complications that we didn't cover here, like the role of Sansa and Littlefinger, the Scargosi, Mance Rayder and the Wildlings, the Pink Letter and the Hooded Man, the location of the document signed as Robb's will, and, of course, the White Walkers and the Army of the Dead. Will there even be a North left to rule? We'll talk about some of this stuff in future videos. Thank you to the Game of Thrones fan experts who helped with this video script, including Lady Gwyn and Yolkboy of Radio Westeros, and Nina Friel of the Good Queen Alysanne Tumblr. Links are below. The Grand Northern Conspiracy is an idea that hundreds of fans have contributed to over the years. In particular, you might like to check out essays by Yeed and Bran Vrass and Cantus. Thanks also to artists Amok and Zippo514 and Ertach Ultanos for permission to use their work. Lots of links in the description. Finally, thank you to the patrons supporting AltShiftX. This video truly would not exist without your support. Thanks for your patience on this one. It was a long time coming. We'll be holding a vote soon on the topic of the next big video, so make sure to make your voice heard. Again, thank you all, and see you next time.